Let's talk a little bit about staining some plywood. Plywood, the nice thing about plywood is there's not a lot of messing with the surface before you actually stain it. You could fill the grain, but most plywoods, either softwood or hardwood, are very smooth and there's very little depth to the grain. You do want to lightly sand it. This is a sanding block with grade 220 grit sandpaper on it. And so we're going to demonstrate staining this surface. So we will just lightly sand it to our satisfaction. Modern plywoods, the outer surface layer is extremely thin. So sanding is something you want to go lightly on plywood, or you could sand through to the next layer. You can't recover from that mistake, so you don't want to make it. So only use 220 grit sandpaper. Don't use a stronger grit. After you have sanded, either by hand or with, say, an electric random orbit sander, you want to use a tack cloth. Tack cloth is a cheesecloth kind of material that you can see here that has a sticky oil-based substance in it. You can feel it with your hands that it's slightly sticky, and the purpose of that stickiness is to grab hold of the little particles of wood that were taken off by sanding and to pull those off so then they don't get stuck in the finish. It's always a good idea to store your tack cloth away from air, so I put them in little Ziplocs like that in between. So today we're going to demonstrate here two different kinds of oil-based stain and how to do those on plywood. One is the classic penetrating liquid wood stain, again oil-based, and the other is a gel stain. The normal penetrating stain can be put on with a brush or with a cloth. It's very quick to put on and very easy to put on. However, it's much more difficult to control it from from having a blotchy appearance. Where there's dark and light, it's more difficult to control the evenness of the color and the finish. With a gel stain, it's a little bit more time consuming to put on because you have to wipe it on, rub it in, and then take it off. The penetrating, you just brush it on and then lightly wipe it off with a cloth or a paper towel. So first, let's do this classic penetrating liquid stain. And of course, we always mix our wood stain to make sure that the color is evenly distributed throughout the liquid. I'm going to use a little brush. You would normally use a much bigger brush than this, but since we have a small surface for purposes of demonstration, we'll just put it on with this small brush. And you take the brush and rub it around a little bit as you put it on. The purpose of that is to make sure it penetrates and touches all the various surfaces. You do not allow this kind of stain to dry. As a matter of fact, you don't allow any kind of stain to dry. And we will take a cloth and we will just remove it by wiping it off. So you can see that this stain is blotchy, and that's what's difficult to control, but you also saw how very simple it is to put on. So that's the kind of results you get with that type of stain. So let's move to a gel stain. A gel stain is called a gel stain because it's kind of a jello-like consistency, kind of a, well, we'll show you here, kind of a paste. Yogurt is about the consistency that we're talking about. If you want to look at it there, this is before it is stirred, but you can see it's solid and jiggly. You stir it for the same purpose as stirring the liquid penetrating stain, that is to mix it. Now in this case, we're just going to use a paper towel, and I get some of the stain onto the paper towel, and now you rub it on. And with this type of stain, this gel type of stain, you want to spend some time rubbing this in. most often with the grain, but also sometimes across the grain. Stains are made up of particles that are suspended either in a liquid or in a gel. And you want to get the particles as evenly, they're color particles, as evenly distributed on the surface as you can, so that when you wipe off the gel or the liquid, you leave behind some of those color particles. Now you can see that as you rub this in, it's beginning to dry, although it's not dry yet. You can see, I hope you can see that it's shiny and still liquid. So then we take yet another cloth after we have rubbed it in, and we take it off. Wipe it off. And you can also wipe this repeatedly. If there's an area that's too dark, you can wipe it a little more. And so you can see that you get a fairly uniform stain pattern and color on that. Now, one thing I will tell you is that these cloths, or even paper towels that you use with oil-based finishes, you have to be careful that you don't get a fire in your shop from spontaneous combustion. Spontaneous combustion happens when you take these oil-based products, you wad them up and you let them just sit there. They will produce heat, and they do sometimes flame up. So what you want to do is you want to get it into a single layer, and you want to put it over something to dry. A single layer, and lay it over something to dry overnight so that you don't have the issue of spontaneous combustion. So gel stains take a little longer and are a little bit messier to apply. The liquid stains are very simple and quick, but you get more uniform results in general with the gel stain than you do with the liquid stain.